Cool.
Partner
Okay.
Maris. Yeah.
All right. Marty's here. We can get the party started.
All right.
And I think I will get started. Oh, and I see Nikki joined us. Okay, cool. So we've got a good number of people, just a couple people missing. And so it's 4:09 now. I apologize for getting started late, but we're here now. So we'll go ahead and get started. And I feel like I say this every meeting. I need to stop right at 5 o'clock because I have a city council meeting. So we'll try to get things moving along. Speaking of that, then why don't we just jump in? We've got the minutes from the prior meeting. And does anyone have any comments, questions on the minutes from the last meeting? Okay, so hearing none, then this is on the agenda for approval. So can someone just say so moved, please?
So moved.
Okay, so we'll have there was a bunch of people. Was that Paula? Were you saying something? Well,
Yes, I did.
okay, so we'll do Paula with the first, and then I think I heard Brett's voice for the second. And let's just do this. Does anyone oppose the approval of the minutes? Okay, then by default, the minutes are approved. So we'll go to item number 2, which is the presentation on the demonstration of the ag plastics to transportation fuel project. Sounds intriguing. Let's go. For it.
Well, there's a lot of innovation coming, and I'll do just a quick introductory. There's a lot of innovation coming and has been in this industry, and what's coming out of the plastics challenges we have now are new innovations for how to recycle plastics. Because clearly there's a lot more plastics that aren't recyclable than are. And in particular, we were approached by this organization most specifically because we have the preponderance of film plastic in the country is coming out of the Salinas and Pajaro Valley. So we're sort of in a hot spot for one of the plastics that, and I can tell you for probably over 20 years, I have been working with companies that have come and gone trying to recycle both plastic mulches we see in the strawberry industry, hoop plastics, fumigation plastics, and drip tubing. These are all variations of polyethylene, non-fluorinated plastics. And it continues to be a problem. We're no longer recycling the household film plastics we see in wrapping and packaging. And so we've got some opportunities. So I'm just going to introduce Michael Brown and a little background for most of you. Michael Brown was actually formerly of Brown Benson Associates, and he was one of the original architects of the authority. He was under contract in the late 90s when the agency was being formed, and his organization did a lot of the groundwork to set up the agency, and actually served as a consultant for the agency for about 10, 15 years, actually. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to introduce Michael, and he can tell you a little bit about the company that he's working with to sort of advance this new process.
Great, thank you, Patrick. Yeah, it's fun to be back in Salinas. I did spend almost 15 years of my life helping to create the authority, helped to raise its first bond issue to buy the landfills, and been involved in quite a number of interesting projects and activities in the valley. Now I'm associated with a company called Plastic Fuel Incorporated, and the company is the licensee for a technology called plastic gas. If I could get the next slide, please. Hopefully she'll move that. Otherwise, I'll have to do the whole thing from memory. Erica, can you move that? There we go. The company was formed to deal with the problem of plastics, and you're all aware of the floating islands. I was reading some things in it. In fact, National Geographic is so concerned about the plastic floating in the oceans that they're sponsoring a big grant program next year. They were going to do it this year, but COVID kind of pushed it back, for companies like ours to help actually deal with removing plastics that are floating around, making these, many, many miles of plastic. So the mission of our company is to attack the plastic pollution at the source. And I want to be clear and upfront that there is a certain portion of plastics that are successfully being recycled, and that's not our target at all. We're looking at the 90% that isn't. Every time I would show you little video clips and pictures of turtles caught in six-pack rings and nets, and even large fields of film plastic, of the kind of plastic that is so prevalent in the Salinas Valley, where there really are no good recycling opportunities. But we managed, after a worldwide search, to find a company headquartered in Mexico that has a proprietary plastic conversion technology. It's the only one that we could find operating anywhere successfully in the world at scale. There are a couple of other companies talking about building projects, having ideas, little experiments, but this is the only one that we've seen that actually ever works. Has been working. So we invested in a pilot plant. It's in our, we have a food waste biodigester that we built and are operating down in San Bernardino County. It's there at our digester facility, and it works. We put plastics of all types into the what we call the reformer, and 5 or 6 hours later we have gasoline, diesel, kerosene, and a leftover char material. And the material, the fuel is so pure that we poured it right into my partner's diesel BMW and my other partner's gasoline powered car and drive away with it. It's perfectly pure fuel ready to go. So let's go to the next one. The problem that we want to address, and by no means will we be able to solve the problem, but we'd like to do our part, is that less than 10% of all plastics has ever been recycled. There was a study done, released not too long ago, that went all the way back to the 1950s when plastic was, better living through plastic. And for those of you old enough to remember The Graduate and The Future is in Plastics. And there's never been or more than about 10% of plastics that have been recycled. The actual number right now in California was last year was around 11%. That's shrinking though because of the Chinese on the plastics they'll take. And also in investigating China, we found out that 40% of the plastics that have been sent historically to China have been illegally burned or thrown away, that they only keep the good stuff. So our 10%, or at least the portion of that that's going to China, is really only 6%. And I think we're all aware of the amount of plastics that are getting into the wrong places. Next, please. At the same time, we're burning a heck of a lot of fossil fuel, in spite of our governor's mandate to phase out fuel burning trucks and cars by 2035. There's still a lot of trucks on the road. And if you look at these numbers, 48 million gallons of gasoline per day are being burned in California alone, 10 million gallons of diesel. So here on the one hand, you have a plastics, which is a problem. We can't get rid of it. We can't figure out what to do with it, or at least 90% of it. At the same time, we're burning fossil fuel. How can we put those two together to do something better? Next, please. So our plants are designed to take any kind of waste plastic. As Patrick mentioned, we're avoiding the chlorinated plastics. We have no evidence that any toxic emissions or toxic products are formed through the chlorination. However, we just aren't really interested in experimenting with that or trying. And we thought that the Salinas area, partly because I spent so much of my career and lifetime helping with waste diversion activities, and especially because of the film plastic and ag plastic problem that you have, would be a great place. So about half of the output comes out as gasoline, a little over a quarter as diesel, a little bit of kerosene, a little bit of paraffin, a little bit of LPG. That should say LPG. I translated this from Spanish, and I'm sorry, my Spanish isn't perfect. So it's LPG in English. And then there's about a 2% residue, possibly a little higher with film plastics because of the dirt that we expect to be in there. Next, please. So looking at the numbers, 35 million tons of waste plastic produced in the United States each year, about 10% being recycled. That means there's over 30 million tons per year of waste plastics that aren't going to the right places. Each of our small plants consume about 10,000 tons per year. These are not really large plants. And that would mean that there would be enough plastic if we got it all, which is unlikely, but if we got it all, we could site 3,000 of these and produce 6 billion gallons of fuel annually. So the potential is there. We're starting small, but the potential is there for this to have a huge impact anywhere in the United States. Next, please.
Oh my God, why does it keep on coming up?
I'm sorry, did somebody have a question?
No, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Michael. I think we're having problems with Zoom. Because
Uh-oh.
it seems like it's freezing on Rosie. She's the one that's driving the presentation.
Okay, well, we're almost done. There's only, if you can get back to, go to the next one, which I saw momentarily. There we go. So this is what the plant looks like. I guess I can use my cursor. Can you all see my cursor okay?
No.
Okay, so this is called the reformer. And the in our pilot and also in the small plants that we're talking about starting with, the plastic is loaded in a batch, and our pilot takes about 150 to 200 pounds. This one, the one that we'd like to put together as a demonstration project in the Salinas Valley would take 7 tons per batch. The plastic is heated, it is not burned, it is not chemically treated in any way. There's a small burner at the bottom that heats air. The air then is recirculated through the plastic. It warms it up. It really reminds me of the moonshine stills. So you put the corn mash in the big distiller, and the heat drives off the volatile things, which in this case become then and get dropped out, just like moonshine drops out as you cool this volatilized material into whatever moonshine corn liquor you're making. And so we have different tanks that are sized and placed such that they will drop out the different products: gasoline, kerosene, diesel, and paraffin. That's really the whole process. This entire process is completely sealed, so there are no emissions from the process itself to the atmosphere. The only emission source is the little burner down here. And what that's doing is it's taking the off gas that does not become one of our products, recirculates it into this burner, and the burner then heats the air, which the air then comes into contact, and no flames in the plastic themselves. So it is completely energy self-sufficient after about a 15 to 30 minute warm up. Now, the concern about the burner is interesting because it is the one pollutant source and it is burning an off gas. I mentioned that we built and are operating a very large food waste biodigester. And so we took the burner and we installed it in one of our boilers that burns biogas that then heats up the food waste. The burner is so efficient and so small that even though that project is in the toughest air quality management district, I believe in the country, maybe the world, the South Coast Air Quality Management District, they permitted it with what they call a registration permit. In other words, we didn't have to go through a health risk assessment, or it was so far below any of their requirements that it was done with a 2-page application and a $100 check. Alternatively, the rest of our biodigester, we have 5 permits. We spent $500,000 on testing. They're continuously monitored with emissions. So I guess what I'm saying here is that the one source of emissions are very, very low. We have not worked directly yet with the Monterey Bay Air Quality District to make sure it's permittable, but we would be very surprised if it wasn't. The product then is taken out in, originally the concept was to put it in small storage tanks and then off to market. However, we've got a new investor in the company, and they're the ones that are providing the funding for our first demonstration plant, which is why I'm talking to you tonight. And they're a nationwide transporter of fuels, particularly fossil fuels and biodiesel. And they have a truck. I just got a picture, so I didn't have time to get it in here. It looks like a standard fuel truck over the highway. The difference is it's compartmentalized, so you can actually put gasoline, diesel, and kerosene in the same truck. So we're thinking for this small project, we may not even have any storage tanks at all. We may just have 1 or possibly at the most 2 trucks being loaded. You know, one goes off to market, and they call it a truck swap. So that's the way this all works. Maybe we could go to the next one. Hopefully we'll get it. Okay. We are participating with Driscoll's. Driscoll's invited us to participate in a life cycle environmental analysis. This is conducted, I was going to say going to be, but actually I have a homework assignment from UCSB's Bren School of Environmental Management to start filling out and providing information. And they are going to do a life cycle, an independent life cycle analysis of plastic, field plastic, specifically agricultural plastic waste management, and compare it to landfill, to, I guess we call it clandestine dumping in the fields and water, and study all of its environmental impacts over this period of time. They think that by Thanksgiving, so which is before we would even ask the Solid Waste Authority board for any type of commitment, they will have at least a draft of this life cycle environmental assessment done. And that way the board would be, and your advisory committee would have some real data to see from the theoretical standpoint, and based on test results at our pilot and the commercial project in Mexico, this is a far superior, much lower greenhouse gas footprint, virtually no emissions, etc. But again, that'll be, that is ongoing now, and we hope to be able, next time we talk with you, to report some results. Next, please. So the plants that came with our license are in modules of 7 ton per batch. We can do up to 2 batches a day, and you see that they grow in size. We would start with a 7 ton system. That's our proposal for what we want to do in the Salinas Valley, operating initially 1 shift, then go to a 2nd shift. We have a feedstock supply commitment from Salinas tarp pullers to provide the plastic for us. And Driscoll's, as I mentioned, is very interested in participating and watching, and if this works, not only would they want to see it in the Salinas Valley, but also in the Oxnard region, in Florida, and in Mexico. And we did, based on that, get a little extension on our license so we can do projects in Mexico. Next, please. Oh, I'm sorry, go back one if you can. So I did want to highlight a 7 ton per shift, operating 1 shift, makes about 500,000 gallons per year of good usable fuel. And so we would aim for getting to 1 million gallons with our 2-shift operation. And our idea is to share the fuel with the authority member agencies, Driscoll's, some of the farmers who are contributing this, really to make it a community-based project. Our partner, who is the transporter, has markets for it, national markets for it, so we can make it all disappear. But we thought, if it's plastic that comes locally, let's make the product available locally. So I just wanted to mention that. Next. So as far as we know, and we did very extensive searching, this technology is the only demonstrated technology in the world to take dirty waste plastic and make a certified drop-in fuel. We're doing testing right now with the lab that handles all of the EPA's fuel testing to make sure that it meets the standards. It is operating in Mexico. I haven't visited there, my partners have, and I've seen videos and lots of test results. And we do have an operating pilot plant in Southern California. And what I wanted to ask you is, the pilot plant is transportable. It's in a trailer. And we were thinking that if there was enough interest from the advisory committee and some of the board members, we'll bring it up to Salinas and park it somewhere. The only difficult thing with it is it's about a 5-hour process, which nobody really wants to hang around for 5 hours to see. But we would bring it up, set it up, load in 150 or 200 pounds of field plastic. And we're testing field plastic now in the pilot. Works great. And we'd let you see it. And if you wanted to take a little jug full and put it in the back of your car, then if you're brave enough to do that, that's fine. If not, we'll put it in ours and drive back. So I don't know if that's of interest, but we could certainly do that either sometime next month or later on in the year. Next. So that's what I have to say. I guess I'd like to conclude by what is our specific ask of the Salinas Valley. We want to do this first project in Salinas Valley. We're looking at other locations as well. There's a very good location in Southern California using plastic that can't be recycled out of MRFs, material recovery facilities. But my heart is still there in Salinas. And because of your special problems with the film plastic, because film plastic is a very homogeneous material that makes it easy for us to handle. And my many years with the authority and working on other pilot projects like the autoclave and other things, I know that the authority is a good partner for us in this, in terms of looking at the data, getting a good sense from the stakeholders and from the member agencies. So we really want to put it there. So after some discussions with Patrick, we think that there's a nice site at the closed Crazy Horse landfill. It's got a building on it already that we can use. It's got a couple acres of pavement that we can store plastic, although Tarp Pullers has agreed to be the storage area. We don't have to put a lot of plastic there, but typically we'd want like 3 days worth. So if they take a 3-day weekend off, we can still feed our machine. It gobbles plastic every day. So we're asking for a lease, a short-term lease. We're thinking of 2 or 3 years of operation should be sufficient to really prove this out. We'd like you to love it and want it to stay there and grow and really take care of the plastic problem in the valley, but that's not a requirement. It's portable enough that we can pick it up and take it off site. If for any reason you don't like it, we'll take it out right away. And if you do like it, but don't want us to stay there, that's fine too. And so we're asking for a lease. I guess I would call it a lease with benefits. And what I mean by the benefits is just the involvement of the authority, the advisory committee, the member agencies. Use the fuels if you want to, help us publicize it, give us critique. We'll do, like I was thinking, maybe quarterly reports of what's going on, all the emission testing, everything will be fully instrumented so that you know exactly what's going on at all times. And give us a beta testing of the desirability of this on a community scale. Our plan is to go to the executive committee on the 5th, and if they don't kick us out, then we'll go to the board on the 19th, and hopefully they'll approve and direct Patrick to work out a lease with us, and we can put it up early next year. That concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Michael. This is Rob. This is Rob. I'm the board president. So, and I'm chair of the executive board. So I don't plan on kicking you out on the 5th.
Okay. Well, you'll get to hear this 3 times. I'll try to vary the content a little bit so it won't be boring.
There you go. Well, hey, no, actually, this will be your test to see if you fix the PLG to LPG. So
call me on it if I don't.
Couple questions. I'm curious regarding what the secret sauce, the proprietary component of this, the way this is done compared to some of the others that were not successful or not as good as this. But so that's a question. And then the other is, Has the U.S. military been approached on this? I think about Fort Hunter Liggett in our backyard here, and they have their net zero initiative, and it seems like this is a perfect fit for the military in one way or another. So curious, those two items.
Okay, well, let me take them backwards. We have not approached the U.S. military, not for any particular reason, but we only got the license a few months ago, and we started our testing, I believe, in March with the pilot plant, and we're right now overwhelmed with opportunities. We have investors that are putting money in, and they really see this and they get this, and our focus is on getting one built in a good spot like you guys, where people will want to come and look at it, and a credible agency like yours who said, yeah, we have it here and it works and it's making good fuel. So as far as the military itself, we just haven't had time to market them. In my former life as a consultant, and when I worked for you, I also worked for a joint working group of the military, of the different military branches, and was involved in developing that net zero initiative. And we did hundreds of base-wide energy audits, and so I'm very familiar with that. And you're right, a mobile fuel was the thing that we didn't have back in the 2000, 2010, and the 1900s. The secret sauce. Okay, well, I would get shot if I told you the secret sauce. It is patented, it is proprietary. But I can tell you that all of the other technologies require a catalyst to crack, if you will, the plastic evaporative material into the different components. Ours does not. It's completely and as simple as a moonshine still. It took them about 18 years to perfect this to the point that it is, and it is pressure and temperature and distance. So you saw the little dropout tanks; those have to be exactly positioned. If you move them a foot one way or another, then it's not going to work. And it's that combination of the temperature that it's heated to, the cooling that happens, there's refrigeration that's going on inside there, and getting it to the precise temperature where high octane, it's 102 octane gasoline, drops out and nothing else does. And then it goes to the next one where the pressure, temperature are changed to where diesel drops out, and so forth.
Interesting. Thank you. Nikki, you had a question?
I did. Well, congratulations. This is really exciting. I've worked with the Bren School of Environmental Science and Management on 2 projects. Exceptional. I think you've answered one question, was do you need an air quality permit? So I think you're still looking at that. I think you've also answered what technology do you use to clean and condition this material so that it's rendered good for diesel, good for propane, and all of the other gas, because I know there's a lot of work into cleaning and conditioning and rendering it useful for all these different fuel types.
Just a comment, Nikki, on that one. One of the things we like about Salinas tarp pullers is that they actually wash in the field the plastic as they pull it out. And so the plastic that we get, I can't say it's completely mud free, but it's much better than a lot of the plastics we've seen. So that's a good help. Then we have a system, I didn't show it on here, but a shredder grinder that also helps separate out any of the inerts. We don't want dirt in there. It doesn't hurt anything though. It's just kind of a waste of capacity. If we can put 7 tons in, and that makes 1 million gallons, but if 1 ton of that is dirt, then we have 6/7 of 1 million gallons come out. It just passes through it, and we clean it out at the end. But it really is a robust system that doesn't get finicky with dirt or other things, other contaminants that might get in there.
Great. That's been one of the biggest challenges that we've had. And then the final question I have, I have 100 more questions for you that I can take offline, but what happens to the byproducts of this material once you render it into fuel?
Okay, so as I showed in that earlier chart, there's about 2% of what comes in that is solid in the bottom. And we open up the reformer and take it out, and it's kind of a gritty, little bit tarry material. If it's clean enough, if there's not a lot of dirt, and in Mexico it is that way, they actually pull the dirt by the plastic by hand off of the face of a landfill. The project there is sited at a landfill. And so they're able to sell that material, and it's equivalent, if you're familiar with petroleum coke, it's one of the byproducts of refined petroleum, and it's used in the petroleum industry. We don't know if that material, the material's been tested, it's benign, it's like a gritty sand. We know it is not hazardous in any way. Whether we could actually sell it, who knows? I mean, that's part of the demonstration, part of what we'll learn. If we can, great. If it could be used for like asphalt, mixed in with asphalt, seems like it would be a good consistency for that, road base. But that would be part of the testing and demonstration that we would do over the testing period.
Well, my final comment is I think Monterey County is the place to be to demonstrate the capabilities of this technology so that we can use it for Ventura County and other areas across the nation that use this mulch, this plastic mulch that is so problematic. So thank you. I enjoyed the presentation.
Great, and thank you for your support.
So Paula, I see you unmuted yourself. Did you have a question?
Yes, I do. First of all, I wanted to say, Michael, thank you very much for this presentation. It's a very exciting concept, and I can see lots of applications. My first question is, this could be obviously a gut punch for the fossil fuel industry. And will you be approaching the fossil fuel industry to be an end buyer, or do you have another marketing chain that you will use?
So our first preference is to use it locally. Now, we don't want to and won't put a filling station at Crazy Horse. That's, I want to be clear, that's not our idea, to come up and fill up your car. However, if the authority itself burns quite a bit of diesel in operating the landfill, the transfer trailers, and the member agencies certainly do. I've done energy audits for Monterey County, for the city of Salinas. I know what kind of fuel uses are there. The farmers are big consumers of fuel. One advantage, which I don't quite understand, but by making it an off-road fuel, it's exempt from taxes, so we can make it very cost effective for them. So I'd like to, on a small project like this, work out using it locally. Our partner, who's in the fuel transportation business, says we'll take care of any that isn't used locally. They'll transport it to the markets that they serve. We have a potential investor, though, just to speak to your point, that is an oil company. I can't say their name at this point, but they want to be green. They have tremendous pressure from stockholders, from the government, to be green when basically they're not. And if you look at like who's the number one solar company in the United States, it's BP, British Petroleum. So they're trying to paint a green face on themselves. And this investor is trying very hard to get us to accept an investment. And not only would their money be available to build other plants, but they want to co-locate our plants with their refineries and put it right into their, incorporate it so they can say, 5%, 2%, whatever it turns out to be, of all of the products that we distribute have this either as an additive or as a direct fuel. So yeah, we're getting a lot of interest from them.
That's good. On an interim basis locally, how will it get to the end user?
Well, for example, I was talking with Patrick and he said, we have a fuel truck and we could come up and fill up our diesel, our fuel tank, and take it down and then distribute it themselves. We do have, through our trucking partner, the ability to deliver They're mainly an off-road, not off-road, a big highway, 9,000 gallon big tankers that you see going down the road. However, they're happy to put in small delivery trucks so that if we can take it in a decent size, I'm not sure what the number is, but maybe 500 gallons or 1,000 gallons, and come to a customer, make a route, for example, and go. Many farms have their own fuel tanks because they don't want to take their equipment off the farm site, nor do they want to go on too much on public roads and lose that private property exemption. So they have their own fuel tanks, and we could do a route that would deliver, 500 gallons to this big user, 200 to others. And we are beginning discussions with Driscoll's and some of the bigger users in the valley that could probably consume this, and it wouldn't even make a big dent on their fossil fuel consumption.
Just one more question, and then I'll pass it on to somebody else. Patrick, can you tell me how much, what would be the extension of the life of the landfills if this were something that was done on a regular basis?
That's a good question. 7 tons a day, probably it's less than 1% of our incoming tonnage. So, somewhere in the range of 0.5% to 1%, reduction in what we took in the landfill. So probably a 1% or less increase. I remember plastics are very compact when they go into a landfill, and they're very lightweight. So 7 tons of plastic represents a lot less space than 7 tons of food waste or 7 tons of heavier materials. So the bigger issue with plastics is, it does preserve landfill space. That is true. But it's like anything else we throw away. There's an embedded value here. This is material that was once petroleum, right? And the petroleum companies that are interested in this are the very people that created the feedstock product that was used to make the plastic. So all this technology is doing is converting that plastic back into its semi-original format. Not going back to oil all the way, but going back to a gasoline fuel type product. So yeah, it has some benefit to the authority in terms of landfill space reduction.
Not huge.
It's not massive. But it's significant in the fact that we're throwing something away that was once a single-use resource and bringing it back to life and putting it back into some kind of an application. It's better than throwing it away, right?
Well, I think this is really exciting to explore, and I'll be interested to learn lots more about it.
Great, thank you. Just one comment I want to add. You're comparing what this one little demonstration project would do to the landfill quantities going in. I don't know, I did know at one time, I don't know your waste characterization, but for example, in a project that I'm working on in the Grand Rapids area in Michigan, they're 11% plastic. So then, and if you took even half of that, that's landfill, into the landfill, not generation, it's landfill disposal, 11% of 300,000 tons per year for this particular county. So, it's think of it not in terms of what our one teeny little demonstration plant will do, but the potential. If we could eat 5, 6, 8% of what's going into the landfill, that's significant. Point number one. Point number two is most of it's not going into the landfill. I mean, I'd love to show you some videos that we've taken of in your county field plastic dump sites that have been there for over 10 years. That, one of them we call Plastic Mountain. It's literally mountains high, mountain high of these bales and loose things of plastic, and what's going into the ocean is really I don't know, I can't say a good word that would be descriptive. And you'll see that's the other place where you'll see a big reduction. If we if the enthusiasm of Driscoll's and tarp pullers and others that handle this stuff, we can show them and we've offered them a lower cost option than landfilling. So this is not a pie in the sky. The numbers work, and it's lower cost than landfill. They'd like to do that. I mean, Driscoll's doing this big study and offered to pay for our participation in it because they don't want to do what they have to do now because A, the landfills are so expensive, and B, there's lots of dumping places they can get away with. So I think it does have a impact far beyond the 0.5 to 1% kind of region.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I sort of mischaracterized that because I was looking simply at this project as it's proposed. And Michael is right. When I look at, for instance, Monterey Regional, who does a large share of the curbside recycling in our county, they have a lot of secondary plastics now that they used to be able to market. And so as long as you can maintain the cleanliness in the plastic you're feeding the machine, basically polyethylene non-chlorinated plastic, so staying away from things like PVC pipe and polyvinyl chloride, which doesn't exist in a lot of things, but some. And you're just focusing on the film plastics. Those are polyethylene. Those are pure carbon-based plastics, and when they are regenerated or reformed, they produce some very clean product. So Michael is right. It is probably more substantial, assuming that the pilot leads to a more substantial plant or multiple plants to serve the county.
So we have time for one more question, and then I want to get moving on our agenda here. I see Mark Bloom, you unmuted yourself. Did you have a question?
Yeah, just real quick, Michael, do you have your output? Do you have control over hypothetically more diesel than gasoline? Can you control that?
A little bit, and that's one of the things that is high on our list to work on and during this demonstration period. Different plastics produce about the same amount of fuel, but in different proportions, to get to your point. So one type of plastic will give you more diesel and less gasoline, and one more kerosene than the other. And that's something that we want to really investigate and see where the break points are and how we can control the process. So right now we're the test data that we've seen from our own pilot that we've done ourselves and the data we've seen from the plant in Mexico, it's pretty consistent, and there's not a lot of ability to vary it very much.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Like I said, I do want to move on in our agenda. I appreciate your time, Michael. Definitely intriguing. And then to all of the advisory board members, our exec board meeting is next Thursday. So it's November 5th at 4 p.m. And that is open to the public. So if anyone would like to call in or go on Zoom for that meeting and hear the presentation and hear what questions the exec board have, you're welcome to do so. So on that note, Michael, thank you for joining us. Patrick, was there any last comments that you wanted to make before we move to the next item?
No, I think it's just, it's an exciting opportunity. And as the agency's always done, we've been very supportive over the last couple of decades in looking at new technologies like this. And that's how we make change, is to look at it. And the good news of this is that there's a benefit to the authority, benefit to the community. As a demonstration, we get to see real time, like we did with the autoclave, how viable it is. And down the road, we'll be, well informed in making a decision if we want to support some kind of a larger version of this that would support the region. So it's always good to see it firsthand and kick the tires.
There you go. Okay. Well, Michael, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye, all.
Thank you.
Agenda-wise, I'm actually going to jump around. I'd like to go down to item number 4, because I do need to drop off promptly at 5 o'clock to get ready for my city council meeting. So I'd like to take number 4 first, which is the update on the Sun Street Transfer Station relocation project and the City of Salinas 1-year notice of intent to withdraw. And primarily wanted to jump to that because both at, well, this would have been, I guess it would have been 2 Salinas City Council meetings ago, and a comment was made by Councilmember Tony Villegas, and then he repeated the comment at our last authority board meeting, is Tony has requested that the City of Salinas put to a vote leaving the authority. And Tony specifically said that he believes that he and his fellow council members have enough information to vote to leave the authority. So he provided that comment both at the city council meeting, then again at our authority board meeting. The Mayor Cromini's still maintains that she is requesting that the vote, the action not be taken until the new council is seated. But Tony Villegas is really putting pressure on his fellow council members to vote to leave the authority. So you all need to know that. And it's kind of more reason for us to pay attention to what the Salinas City Council is doing. In a second, I'll ask Patrick for any updates that he might have on this topic. But it was strong words that Tony used, and here in our group, we all understand the implications of the City of Salinas leaving the authority. So let me pause there for a second. Patrick, do you have any other updates that you want to provide right now?
On the withdrawal issue, yeah, I think Rob stated it pretty succinctly. This makes no sense for the city to leave financially at a time when they're working through their Salinas plan to take on their share of the authority liabilities would not benefit them in any way, shape, or form. And of course, we don't know when they say they have information, we're not really certain what that means, because the R3 report that they commissioned, a year and a half ago that was supposed to be released August of last year, still has not been released. So we're hopeful that at least they will provide us some opportunities, both at council and their finance committee meeting when they bring this item forward for discussion, to let us speak this time, actually give us an opportunity to share our thoughts. So that's all I have, my thoughts on the withdrawal. I do have some additional update on the relocation project, though. Anybody has any questions first on the withdrawal issue? You take those questions or comments first.
I think it'll be good if we get the relocation update, because they're interconnected.
Okay. Well, if I see no one else, I will go ahead with the relocation. So as we talked last time, we've been talking with Republic Services, who acquired the Madison Lane transfer station. It seems that that's the only site that the city seems interested in having us go to. Because that site was purchased out from under us when we were about to start CEQA on it, we're sort of left at the hands of Republic to sort of decide, what you can or can't do, or whether we will or won't let you in. But the good news is, with the interim city manager, Jim Pia, is a very, very great at collaboration, and he's done a really good job of bringing us together to have some really substantial discussions, just in small groups with Republic and myself and my senior staff and the city's staff as well. And I think, we've got some concept ideas. I mean, our goal right now, and we've expressed that clearly to Republic, is we want to duplicate and take forward everything we're doing at Sun Street over to Madison Lane, except for hauling franchise garbage. They've got a transfer station. They have the ability to do that. That's why they bought it. We just want to continue to do what we're doing with the public, the AB 939 and recycling services and things we provide. And so the short version is they've given us a first really high level offer, was really light on detail, didn't really sort of meet what we've been telling them and the board for about 2 years. But they asked for clarification, and we have submitted a counter clarifying offer, which really is consistent with the things that we've talked about with you and the board publicly about wanting to just move the public side of our services to Madison Lane, and what our space and operational needs would be to be able to do that, and then how we can collaborate on using the property. So that's really where we're at right now. We're hoping to get a reply back from them this week, keep that conversation going, and then we'll be reconvening with the city manager and a couple of their staff in the middle of next week. So hopefully we'll get some traction and be moving in the right direction by the time we have that meeting, because the goal at this point is to have an MOU with Republic that just outlines the business points. We're not going to get to a full agreement by the end of November or early December. That's going to take some time, but we need to have the framework for an agreement that our board and the city council can bless, and hopefully that progress will be enough for the city to step away from the withdrawal format and reconsider the value of what we're doing and how we can do that with Republic. But it's up to the city to leverage this. The city's in a position to exert some influence over Republic, and that will help move this along, because that has not been in existence for a long time. So I'm cautiously optimistic that the leadership we have at the table now is going to help facilitate a solution that works for everybody.
Chair, if I could ask Patrick a quick question. I know the last time we met, it was, I think, a couple of days or the week before you were going to meet with the city. It sounds like there has been some forward motion. Are you optimistic, or are you still in the same boat? Okay. Yeah.
No, I'm actually optimistic. I'm optimistic with the leadership we have at the table right now. And it's only because we don't know who the new city manager is going to be. We don't know what the election's going to bring. But I think where we're at right now, and Republic has been, they've been responsive. It's just slow with them. And it's mostly because they have a much taller ladder to go up when they want approval for something than we do. Really, the ladder is I'm the last rung before it goes to the board. So we can move things much quicker whereas Republic's a multi-tiered, large, multinational corporation, and it's got to go. Approvals for things that they may agree to with their assets and properties have to go through several layers of bureaucracy before the person at the table gets authorization to say yes or no to something. So, but their commitment to us is yes, they want to move this forward quickly. They understand the importance of timeliness, and with our reply to them last week, we're expecting a reply back this week and continue to move it, hopefully move closer together in what we need and what they want to offer. So yes, I am optimistic. That's what all things, we're dealing with a large corporation. So I'm doing that with some caution, just to be clear that they may have other motivations for their corporation relative to longer range regional plans for expanding their business, and don't know if we're going to be a asset or an impediment to their plans, and we're probably not going to hear that from them. But this is the most movement we've had in years, so that's why I'm feeling some optimism now.
Patrick, I think Rob had dropped off because he needed to take off. So I don't know if you want to move forward with leading the meeting, or if you want me to act as the not mediator, but
I guess I'll have to get the hands up button going here.
yeah.
If Erica, you or Rosie could keep an eye on raising hands.
Sure.
Of course.
Yeah, let me know if someone was. So that's really where we're at. I mean, we're trying to move this forward quickly. And again, the goal is to get to what we call a business point deal, where we have the framework for the agreement. The agreement's going to take several months because you got all the fine points and costs and those kind of things. But having the framework, I think, would be a huge step forward for us. So we sort of understand, because there's some things we're putting on the table for Republic too, that to sweeten the deal, things that we would help them with or offer to include in a partnership, so that we're not just we're giving and taking in this deal. It benefits everybody. So anybody else have questions, comments? We're going to talk a little bit about the output from this committee and how you can help us in terms of providing your input to the full board on not just this, but really any of the items that we bring forward for committee discussion.
Patrick?
Yes.
Hi, this is Grant Leonard. I attended the last board meeting, as you know, but for the other committee members. And I heard that discussion with Councilmember Vegas and that Mayor Pro Tem as well. So again, encourage all the committee members when these board meetings come up, or the advisory committee, to participate. I did think it was interesting, the vice mayor pushing back against councilmen, and then also reminding the whole board that she's thinking about the agency and not just the city. Yeah, but as we just saw, sometimes very big decisions can be made and pushed through before the election is finalized. So, regarding the transfer station, just want to check in and see how things are going with the county and the possible road connection, especially with the affordable farm worker housing that's been going in there.
Yeah, well, that remains, as does the other farm worker housing that's already on Madison Lane. Those remain concerns that will have to be vetted at CEQA. Any intensified use of that facility, even though we have an environmental document, it's 20 years old, and it anticipated, 1,500 to 2,000 tons a day of service and a lot of traffic. Things have changed in 20 years. So there's going to have to be some level of environmental review. It could be a supplemental CEQA work that sort of brings some of the new CEQA requirements, environmental justice, greenhouse gases into the final document. Also redoing traffic and things like that. So there's likely going to be some environmental review work that's going to have to be done. Maybe not a full brand new environmental impact report, since I would just say at the top of my head, probably 60 to 75% of what's in the original 2002 EIR that looked at that property is probably hasn't changed, but there are some things that have changed, and there are some new CEQA requirements for things you need to look at. So I think, in all fairness to the community, that those things will have to be vetted, and we'll have to go through that process. So as far as the roadway goes, we haven't had any further discussions with the county other than the initial couple of discussions I had with them on the design, the cost, what they see as needs. The one thing we did get from the county is that roadway extension will have to have CEQA done, and we did agree that it would make most sense to have that roadway extension included in the project and included in any updated environmental study, because they're going to have to do that anyway. So if we include that as part of the project, it just makes that part of the process go a little faster. So they'll have to do their own things like a biological assessment. Are they going are there going to be species out in that field that need to be addressed from a endangered species perspective? So we're having those discussions. We sort of, that's where we've concluded with the county at this point, until we get to the point of agreement with both Republic Services and the city on the scope of the project and the framework for an agreement. Once that's done, then under this scenario, since we're not an owner, it likely would fall on the county to be the lead agency on the environmental study work. And so they'll be providing that at the time we start that, they'd be providing the guidance on how to complete that work.
So if we don't have any other questions, do you want to jump back up to number 3, Patrick? Unless someone else has more questions.
All right, well, you have my number, guys. Y'all know you can get hold of me or Mandy if you have any follow-up. So number 3 is just a very quick update. I just attached the PowerPoint. You already saw this last month, so I'm not going to go back through it. I just have it here for reference in case you want to ask a specific question. But Rosie or Erica, if you could advance the slides to the one that has the rate comparisons on it. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I think that's the important one here in terms of what should be driving this decision. So I have been meeting periodically with all of the Salinas Valley city managers, and we've been having this discussion. As you know from last month, the reason we're having this 5 years out, because all of our agreements for all the cities and the county all expire on June 30th of 2025. And the reason we're talking now is if there is a desire for any of the entities to go through a competitive procurement process, actually seeking bids for this service, as opposed to just extending their existing agreements, this is when we should be talking. It is easily a 3 to 4 year process to get to a final agreement. And then you have to assume that if it's a new vendor, right, it's not your incumbent, but someone else coming in, you should give them about a year to plan and prepare and prep for starting the new service, because they've got to order millions of dollars of collection equipment that can take months, 6-9 months to get from order. So they need a lot of time to get ready. You can't just award the contract to a new guy and say, okay, you're going to start next week. So you have to have that decision a year out, basically by June of 2024. So we start doing the backwards calendar, as you saw, and this is the time to have that discussion. So what we're encouraging the cities collectively to do is to begin this discussion, talk with their councils, board of supervisors about it, consider the timeline, and whether there's any interest in the 3 options we laid out relative to procurement. One is to have one single contract for the entire Salinas Valley with all of our members. The second option is to go out and do one procurement, but for all the agreements as they stand now. So we do one procurement that would, how can I say, there's 2 things. There's the procurement process itself, and then there's the contract. So the first option is one contract, one procurement. Second option is one procurement, but maybe multiple contracts, very similar to what the Monterey Peninsula did. So, for instance, our 3 central cities that have been working together for years, Gonzales, Greenfield, and Soledad, they could choose to say, hey, we're going to put our contract out to bid, and still want one single contract. But if we do the procurement as a region, we still get economies of scale because we're going to award it to one.
Did we lose Patrick?
He's stuck in the matrix.
I think he's frozen. Oh, he's back. Sorry, Patrick, we lost you. You were either stuck in the matrix or frozen in the matrix. We're not sure which one, but.
Okay, well, this is all is all about procurement. So it really is the cities are going to have to decide: do they want a single contract and a single procurement? Do they want multiple contracts but one procurement? So you're still awarding it to only one vendor, but everybody ends up with their own contract, similar to the way it is today. Or do we do an individual RFP or bid process for each individual contract? That's a lot more work, and you're not going to attract as much interest from outside as the first two options would do. So what it seems like right now from the city manager's perspective, I'm not hearing opposition to procurement because the contracts are very old. And the reason I have the rates on there, as you can see, the rates are all over the board. And we have fairly uniform service. Everybody's getting the traditional 3-cart service, garbage, recycling, and green waste. Everybody has that, but you can see there's a wide variation in the rates. On the commercial sector, it's even worse. Some vendors charge for recycling, some don't. The rates are different for smaller services, and the difference gets bigger when it goes to the larger service. So the rate structures are crazy out of sync right now. And that's traditionally happens when you see contracts extended and restated for many years. With the exception of the county, all of these contracts are 25 years or older since they were last competitively bid. And that's why you see this sort of wacky rate variation when everybody's getting basically the same service. And so competitive bidding allows you to bring those rates back to where the market is and to vet out potentially better ideas and better overall rate systems for everybody collectively. So the city managers generally seem to be supportive of going into procurement and not simply negotiating another extension on their agreement. But that's not cast in stone. They can all change their minds. I know Salinas is talking with their vendor, with Republic Services, but we're not part of that discussion, so can't tell you whether that's what they're going to be favoring down the road or not. But those are the options. So city managers are engaged and they're interested, and they're going to start having some individual discussions about it. And at some point, we hope at the beginning of the year, we'll be asked to come back in and provide this presentation to the various councils as well. And at least have a public discussion over, should we do a competitive bid for these utility services, or should we stick with our current vendor and just see what we can negotiate? So any questions? So I'll keep you guys updated on this. This will eventually be a big project coming up in the next year or two. So when we have something important, we'll bring it back to the group for feedback. So is anybody, I'm just curious, what do you all think about this idea? Do you think I know a lot of people are very happy with their garbage company, so this is by no means any kind of criticism to garbage companies themselves. It's just really what's in the public's best interest, or what is the public desire for their services. And you guys will be the first public that gets to opine on this before it goes out to the broader community down next year sometime.
Patrick, I do have a question. Well, number one, let me say that I'm a waste management customer, and I am extremely happy with the service that I receive from them. But second, when you say these contracts are 10, 15, 25 years old, did they all have built in, like, I don't know what you call the increases, but the cost of living increases, which that's how we've arrived at these rates?
Yeah, they all do, but each of them has a little different formula. And
sure, because everybody's contract is different.
Yeah, their contracts are different. Their rates started out differently. Some vendors make rates higher in one sector, like commercials higher. so they can help subsidize or keep residential rates down. And I've seen it the other way around, where residential's higher to support lower commercial rates. And those are political decisions made when they're bid. So that's sort of the first problem, is that these contracts are bid with a different philosophy by each company when they were awarded. And over time, when they're out of whack like that, the inflation factor creates a faster gap, right? You know, if it's a high rate already, and you add 3% to it, it's going to accelerate faster than a lower rate at 3%. So that's the first problem. The second is, over the course of years, all of these agreements have been negotiated, had an extension negotiated, every one of them. And those extensions sometimes come with, oh, hey, I got to buy a whole new fleet of trucks, so I need another 10 or 15%. And so they've had these special inflations that have been added in or negotiated over the course of years, and that again creates more differential between rates. And so this just it's not uncommon to see this in a regional agency with multiple contracts, to see these differentials in rates because they were bid differently, different companies, different philosophies, and different negotiations.
So I apologize for my ignorance, but when these contracts are renegotiated, do you anticipate the rates go up, or do the rates go down?
Never seen them go down.
I mean, if you think about what you just said and how those rates had a built-in increase year over year, you know, if you do the math and someone's bidding them, someone's not taking that into account currently, and they're just bidding them from scratch based on their expenses and profit and loss. To me, is there really any way of knowing? But of course, you know, anecdotally, you're right. The rates tend to not go down.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing you can do with these is to do regional comparisons, right? When you put a bid out, or when you're looking at your rates, you say, what's the market in the greater 5-county region, you know, and you look around and you can see what is someone else paying for the same service. Because most communities now in California at least have the 3-cart service as a standard. Some have added food waste or others, but for the most part, the 3-cart system that exists all through Monterey County is pretty standard across California. There's not a lot of exceptions, a few, but not that many. So what's it take to pick up a garbage cart, a green waste cart, and a recycling cart, and take it to a landfill, a composter, and a materials recovery facility? You know, and those costs give you at least a guideline of where are we compared to the region. And some of these rates you see here are better than most places, and some of these rates are way out of line and way above most places. And so that just has to do with the age. It has to do with the age of the contract. They're not market rate any longer. They are a negotiated rate that has changed over time.
Well, if I may go next, Patrick.
Yeah.
So first a question, and that is, so the utility side of this, which is what we're talking about, that's still regulated by the PUC, is that correct?
No, it's not a PUC regulated industry.
It's not?
No.
Okay. So there's besides what the market will bear, there's no limit on the profit that they can make.
That's correct. There is an alternative. I've never been a big fan of it because it's huge. It's a huge cost and administrative burden, but a few agencies do it. And they have what they call a rate review process, which is based on profit. You know, and so at the end of each year, the hauler has to provide an audited statement, all their expenses, everything else, and you know they get wherever the profit is, it's negotiated. That's it. And if they were very profitable in that year, then there's usually an adjustment in the second year, right? Rate may come down a little bit, or at least stay flat and not go up by whatever the cost of living adjustment is. But if the contractor is short, right, let's say the contract says they get 15% profit and they come in at 12% profit, then, well, next year the rates have to go up by the cost of living plus the 3%. They have to make up that 3% loss, and how they spread it. It's a very complex process. I always call it, it's a consultant guaranteed work product, because usually it takes consultant and auditors and some people that are going to look at that thing at great depths, come back and say yes or no. The company will submit an audit. The agency's consultant will review that audit and comment on it, and then the hauler's consultant and auditor will look at it and come back. So it's a South Bayside Solid Waste Authority in San Mateo is the one I'm most familiar with. They go through that process every single year. And it takes 1 year to complete that process, and then they're starting the next year's. That's how crazy it is. And they have a high-paid consultant that makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just managing that rate review process. So you can do that, and it does provide, a lot more certainty that the rates are as good as they can be, and it's capped on a profit margin that's guaranteed. But it's a messy process, very messy. So most of us, all the contracts in this county, primarily go through, a cost of living adjustment process that's fixed.
Okay. And the next thing, I guess my only comment is, I see the value in one contract among everywhere, because then you get economy of scale. But then I don't like that, because I know here in King City, we have different needs than Salinas does, for example. So, I don't know. I'll leave it up to you smart people to figure that one out.
Well, I'll tell you, that's actually a really good comment. That is actually something that is baked into these types of contracts. And that is, even if you have a single contract for the region, you can have a separate rate sheet for each city. You can have what I would call the boutique services. It's simply just an appendix or a chapter in the agreement that says, okay, here's the basic services. Everybody has the same basic structure. But hey, King City wants the option of backyard, wants their customers to have the option to have backyard service, right? You don't put carts on the street. I'm joking here, because that's actually what Carmel does, and they pay a lot more for it. But they don't put their carts on the street. They're not allowed to. So the hauler has to come up, get out of the truck, go to the backyard, wheel the carts back out and dump them, and then wheel them back and put them away. Not very efficient, but that's what they want, because that's just their nature. So you can have one agreement, but have those boutique style services identified that are specific to an individual city or county. So you can still have an agreement and have individuality in it.
And that includes like the different rates. As you were saying earlier, as far as, some will use commercial to offset residential, some will use residential to offset a little bit of commercial. So you can even have those different things under one countywide service contract. Yeah,
and I think this gets to the second procurement option, which is we still do one procurement, right? And it's for the entire region. So you're going to select one vendor, one procurement. So you're still going to get a lot of economies of scale. You're going to get outside interest. But each individual city or groups of cities goes ahead and says, well, I want my own agreement. And so, and this is what the Monterey Peninsula did 5 years ago. They did one procurement. They hired one vendor, but that vendor has an agreement, an independent agreement with each city, and the rates are all different because each city asks for something different. I think City Marina gets the best rates because they're right next to the landfill, right? So there's an offset for transportation because they're not traveling as far. And Carmel pays the highest rates because they don't want people putting their carts out on the street. So they get backyard service, which is very low productivity for a hauler. So they pay the most and then the county may pay a little bit more because their routes, their customers are farther apart. So it's not as efficient. So you can do that, still have the individual contract with the hauler. But going under one procurement and selecting one hauler, you're still going to get a lot of the economies of scale.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Patrick, Caesar, just from your scan of, or have you had an opportunity to kind of compare contracts? Because I'm assuming the scope is the Salinas Valley and not the county. And so understanding South County and everything, I think to an earlier comment, well, King City might be different than Salinas. Well, it is and it isn't. The scale is bigger in Salinas, but if the service delivery is the same, so have you kind of compared apples to apples or figured out if there's oranges in that stack in regards to the boutique stuff? I could get Carmel and others that are doing stuff differently, but have you seen any difference or any boutique stuff? And then also transit of the garbage from one city to the other is very different. Salinas, they'll go to the Sun Street Center or wherever it's going to go out in the future, and then gets hauled to Gonzales. I'm assuming the rate would be different in King City compared to Gonzales. City of Gonzales might get a different rate. Be more in the marina kind of service. So I'm just wondering if you had that opportunity to do that scan yet.
Yeah, no, we are absolutely looking at that, and I think the Peninsula Agreement and their process sort of bore the same thing out. When I say boutique service, that's getting a service that the other cities aren't getting versus transportation related benefits of one or the other. Obviously, if we all get together and we all do it together, you're going to get a uniform rate across the board, and it takes into account, the county rural collection, but also the more concentrated, highly productive city collection, which is the same in every city. So collecting in Salinas isn't really any easier or harder than collecting in King City. But when you look at the county as a separate entity, that becomes a little more costly, simply because it's a longer drive between each customer as you get outside the city. So I think that may be one of the reasons the city managers seem to be leaning that way, but there's been no decision. We're just having conversations. Is that allows for that to be taken into account? If you're, but yeah, the cost to collect in Salinas and the cost to collect in King City really isn't a whole lot different, unless you're a small company and your only contract is King City. Then it's going to be more expensive, right? Because you got a lot of overhead just to collect for that city. But if you have one company that's doing all that work, then the difference between cities is almost negligible.
I did want to say something about the boutique services, and I don't know, Caesar, if this was part of your question, but I know in the last restated and revised franchise agreement for the Tri-Cities area, so for Gonzales, Soledad, and Greenfield, Gonzales, I believe it was, wanted a special alleyway push service that they negotiated with Tri-Cities, and then they also asked for additional bulky waste collection pickups, and then they also asked for a battery collection, a curbside battery collection service. So while Tri-Cities, is a little bit smaller, and the hauler could say okay, yes, we can add those services. Adding that for Salinas, who has, it has 25,000 residents. There's a big cost difference with adding that service for a small city like Gonzales versus adding that service for a much larger customer base for Salinas. So those are just a couple examples of some of the boutique services that are already happening in the Tri-Cities and our South County areas. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Well, does anybody have any more input on this one? Because the wrap up here is the last item about really the advisory committee. You've got a few meetings under your belt, and you sort of know everything that is going on with our agency that's important and challenging. there's a couple things that Mandy and I have talked about that I think would be really important for this committee to do. One would be, preparation, and I'll leave it up to you guys to sort of talk through how you want to do this. Preparation of a periodic report to the board, for instance, on topics of interest we've discussed, positions that the advisory committee may want to support, or ideas, concepts you want to pass on to the board. So we can do it in a couple different ways. One, it can just be like a periodic report, maybe quarterly. The other option could be topic specific. So as we come forward, for instance, and start to take action on the Sun Street relocation, or directly dealing with Salinas on withdrawal, to have the committee, opine as a group on, what's your position, or what are your recommendations to the board? Because that really is what you are, as an advisory body to the board. And the second part, I think, that would really facilitate this, and this sort of came from Grant, so I want to thank you, Grant, for participating in our last board meeting, is I think it'll be very valuable to have on a rotating basis at least one of the advisory committee members commit to participate in the board. You can all dial in any time. I definitely would encourage that, but at least have a schedule so we know that one of you will be available for an entire board meeting, and to express opinions and ideas you heard from your fellow committee members to the board, so they're getting that input. I think that, when Grant spoke up, I think it was actually very helpful, and I think the board needs to hear more from this committee. So again, just summarizing, the two things we're looking at is some kind of reporting structure. And I'd like to just have that discussion with all of you, how you'd like to do that, whether it's, again, quarterly or topic specific, when it's appropriate to say this is what we think you should do, or this is what our position is. And then some kind of schedule to have certainty that at least one of you will be on every board meeting, and even potentially the executive committee, but that might be a bit of a stretch. Typically, executive committee is dealing with finance issues, but we would encourage that as well. And then finally, there may be, again, like city council. If city council takes up this idea, I think it would be valuable for some of the committee members to provide their own input from the committee's perspective. So I'm going to shut up and see if the kind of conversation. Paula?
My question is there a mechanism, have we identified a mechanism, or is there a mechanism in place for the group to have conversation? Right now, it seems that we're taking up the majority of the time for the advisory committee on learning things, but then I think it's probably appropriate that we need to be able to sit down together and discuss what it is that we've learned, and pass our opinions back and forth. What would be the mechanism for doing that?
Well, that's actually a good question. That's what I wanted to talk about tonight, because really number 5 is Mandy and I kicking you out of the nest. So, and really turning the advisory committee over to you guys to really sort of guide. You've gotten all the primers. So, I think the mechanism could be at the next meeting. We'll bring back a list of topics that we've discussed and been educated on, and talk through, who's going to write a report, or, we can dictate what you want and prepare a draft and submit it to the group for editing. Do you want to, again, I think between yourselves, would you prefer to have more focused meetings on like one topic or two topics, and then you report back on those to the board on what you think? So there's a couple ways. One of you can raise your hand and say, I'll be the secretary for the committee, and I will draft up the committee's opinions, or you can ask us, and Mandy and I'll ask Erica to take good notes, and and we'll do our best to try to,
Poor Erica. That's not
I'll
fair.
be happy to.
I'll be writing the report, I think, but at the end of the day, but Erica will be key to keeping some good notes for us. So that's a couple ways to actually get a report prepared. But what are we preparing? Are we doing a quarterly report or a topic specific report?
Will Rob have input with this?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so perhaps it would be appropriate to have him included in the conversation, the decision-making conversation.
Yeah. No, I've discussed this with Rob, so he's aware we were going to sort of, in essence, kick you guys out of the nest this time. Start saying, okay, now we need to start looking at what kind of feedback do you think is really critical to helping the board make their decisions? So we
Personally,
can.
Patrick, I think that quarterly seems to be way too distant based on all of the important decisions that the board has to make imminently. Also, I feel like to this point, we've sort of been overwhelmed by the Sun Street transfer station as a point of information. And there may be a lot of other stuff out there that we haven't quite been educated on. But I think that if we could provide some sort of regular guidance, I think that would probably be the most helpful.
Sure.
What about
Marty?
Oops, sorry.
This is Marty. I just wanted to agree. I think topical and more than quarterly would be a good idea.
Okay.
What about forming subcommittees? Because I think there's a lot of different initiatives going on. And I think getting our arms around, really understanding, having Patrick and Mandy help guide, some areas that we could really focus in and dive into. But I think potentially subcommittees instead of having all of us focus on all the initiatives that are going on. So that's my recommendation. And also maybe if you wouldn't mind sharing, maybe asking permission, but to share everybody's contact information. And then if I could have a list, I know you guys are really good about sending out the executive committee's information, but I'm going to make it a point because I do think it's important to be active rather than just be a listener. And there's a lot of things that affect all of us. So getting more involved is important. So if I could have a list of those executive committees in the city council meetings, that would be really helpful.
Okay, we can do that for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and my thought is very similar to the previous speakers, and I think there's issue specific issues that I think as we kind of process it, like the franchise agreement, regional franchise agreements, or definitely the Sun Street transfer station that I think building into it where this is a written report with one of our members kind of be able to give that report on that specific project. I think it'll be good. And then once or twice a year, just a review, kind of like this is what we've been doing. And that's, I think, something the staff could prepare for us in regards to, we went in depth, like, for example, this last project, less action oriented items, give them an update of what we've been reviewing, but for specific big projects, I think building in even to the board agenda to say, here's staff's recommendation, here's the advisory committee's written report, and then have somebody there to field questions. And I'm assuming at that meeting we would figure out who would be the committee people that would help present that. Because instead of just being written, we should be in the audience ready to answer questions in case there's like, okay, here's the staff report, here's the oversight committee report, any questions, or something like that. I think I would defer to you on the actual agenda, but something where we will have a space to report back.
That's a good idea. I like it.
Yeah, and I think I've done annual reports for which was formerly was the Citizens Advisory Committee, the CAG, And now we're the ACK. So I think we would continue to do that annual summary report, kind of like what you just said, Caesar. But I do like the idea of the committee itself doing the issue specific reports. And I do like, to Nikki's point, forming maybe some subcommittees. And then if you all would like to share emails and have conversations offline and, talk about this further, you don't have to do it here in this setting. You could, discuss amongst yourselves if, that it doesn't have to be Patrick and I and Erica and Rosie listening to this conversation. You're welcome to kind of talk amongst yourselves, meet, offline, virtually, whatever, as a group, and also come back and let us know what you think or who drew the short straw to started attending the meetings and things. But I just wanted to say that from a staff perspective and for someone who attends the board meetings and has to attend the board meetings as part of my job, it was actually refreshing to hear, Grant attend. And I think Grant just attended because, he has an interest and maybe wanted to hear what was going on. But I thought at that meeting, I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity for, not just Patrick to say something or me to constantly tell our board what's going on, but to have the advisory committee report out and be a different voice in this conversation, especially around Sun Street and the withdrawal, and because all they hear is us. They don't, and so having the input from you all was fantastic, and I just was really almost inspired when Grant said what he said. So I just thought that was really great that he took the time out to attend. So now we want to make you do it. No, I'm just kidding. We just want to ask you if you'd be willing.
Speaking of, I'm sorry, speaking of attending meetings, I have to jump into the King City Council meeting also. But can you please keep me updated via email and do not send me the short straw, I beg you. Thank you all. It was great seeing you all. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Brett. What I would propose we do as far as, meeting attendance and participation, unless I hear otherwise, is we'll just put your name in a hat and we'll draw it. And number one has to listen and participate in the November meeting. So unless you want to work amongst yourselves because of potential conflicts and one of these or trade days because something came up and you can't, attend or listen to that meeting on that date. So as far as getting you, one of you as a representative for the committee, listening to a meeting or participating if there's things that you think are important from the committee. I think that's a great idea. I like the idea of a subcommittee. I also like what Brett said, let's be honest, what this agency is facing today is really the withdrawal and the relocation project are really highest priority, even though we got 1,000 other things going on. We'd like to do all of them, but we don't want to overload you guys either. So what I think Mandy and I'll do is we'll put together a topics list of the key topics we've talked about so far. I think the big ones being SB 1383, the organics recovery and all the things related to that. Mandy will share with you her poster that has 152 tasks on it that have to be done between now and end of 2024. And I think that's an issue. That's a place where we'll want to hear some feedback as that. But obviously the franchise procurement. But those two items, are probably things that would be better for next year, only because they're still in process. But I think the relocation and the withdrawal are timely right now to form a committee that wants to put together an opinion or a position report to the board on what you think is important and begin to share that with the board, because those items will be coming up shortly in the next month.
Yeah, if I could just throw some advice, because over the years I've sat on different advisory boards, and I just stepped off of the oversight for the city of Salinas, one of the measures, and one of the things that we've done is if it's a heavy issue like the transfer station kind of thing, we kind of give our point of view at a meeting, have the staff do a report on it, and at that meeting, decide who's going to be on a subcommittee because of the Brown Act, on a subcommittee of that, and have the committee empower that subcommittee to work with the staff to finalize that document, and then that subcommittee figure out who's going to be, it's like, okay, yeah, Grant, you're going to be our, staff is going to present it in the packet, and then you be open there, and whoever else on the subcommittee is available, we can answer questions. But something like that, that way it's kind of like we share our views. Staff is able to take those views, especially with recordings and everything, come up with the document. That way you don't have to wait until the next meeting. We could empower a committee that doesn't break the Brown Act, and then have that committee present. And of course, when we take those comments, we also vote in a committee. That way they're, they have our blessing, if that makes sense.
Okay, a good suggestion.
I think, this is Marty, I think that sounds better than drawing from a hat, because I would specifically prefer to be removed from that selection for about the next 6 months. I'm recovering from a stroke at this time.
Well, look at it this way. We ask for volunteers, and if there isn't a volunteers, and then we draw straws. I think that would be a good practice.
I say we draw the short straw and send it to Brett right now.
Yeah. So do I have any recommendations for instance, the size of a subcommittee? 3, 4?
Patrick, could I chime in a little bit?
Sure.
First of all, I hope our committee members doing well with your recovery. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had a stroke. So thank you so much for attending. I guess I serve on a few other committees, Hartnell Measure T being one of them for the Citizen Bond. And then my past employer, Transportation Agency for Monterey County, has several citizen committees, including their Measure X Oversight Committee and a monthly bicycle pedestrian committee. And typically there's a committee structure with like a chair and a vice chair. And I know we don't have that on our oversight committee here, our advisory committee. So maybe some sort of formal structure to our committee would be beneficial. Or just going around and looking at some of the other agencies that have oversight committees, whether that's MST or one of the water agencies. Since we have so many of them, they have different advisory committees. Kind of get best practices from our partner agencies in the county. And then we could see what would fit for us.
No, I think that was my hope for this meeting tonight. As I said, I think tonight was about sort of kicking y'all loose to start, providing the structure you want to see in terms of advising the board, and less about Mandy or I sitting up and giving you primers on things that are going on. We want to actually step back a little bit and just be your resource and not teacher, which is really sort of what we've been doing for the first part of the advisory committee. And so, yeah, I fully agree. That's a good approach, Grant. So we can talk about that at the next meeting. We can bring back some concepts in terms of committee structure, formal chairmanship, and really how, the format for getting advisory opinion to the board, and other than through staff, have direct. I think Caesar's idea is great of just having you attend a meeting. You guys, the subcommittee or the committee as a whole, can make a decision. These are the 4 or 5 things we think are important around the relocation, and this is our recommendation to the board on what we think is appropriate. And one of you gets up and makes those comments in conjunction with an overall report on that project. You can provide that input. So.
Yeah, just one last thing on attending the board. I did finally attend. I've been wanting to attend the whole time I've been on this committee, but it was always hard for me to drive down to Gonzales and then drive back to Castroville and work night evening.
Yep.
So I actually probably should have been Zooming in since March or April when you guys started this, but Just finally got around to it after our last advisory committee and talking about Sun Street. So as long as you're Zooming, I'll probably still add it to my calendar and plan on Zooming in.
Well, Zoom, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with Zooming when the pandemic's done, but I can tell you I'm a lot more productive. I have more meetings. I should say it's more productive. I have more meetings now, and they are more efficient. And you're right. We have a very big district, you know, from King City and Halone and Bradley all the way up to Prunedale and Pajaro. So yeah, Zoom seems to be making a lot of sense and working for us because of the distance to come to meetings. So yeah, I appreciate that comment. I don't know if our board will go back to Zooms or we can develop some kind of hybrid where people can still participate electronically if they're not able to travel the distance. But
Patrick, are the recordings available too? Like for this meeting and for the executive meetings?
Erica, I know we started posting the electronics for the board meetings. Are we doing it for the EC?
They are for the EC and advisory committee. They are on our website, and I can send the direct link to where they're at if you would like.
That's great. That's super helpful. And I do think there should be some sort of hybrid. That's what I hear a lot of associations are doing, just because the life of the meeting goes beyond just the meeting and people can go back and collect the information. So I think you might get more participation, but I look forward to participating in the next board meeting because I think they're really interesting. And sorry I haven't been there the past couple of months. So excited to be at the next one.
Right. Well, we'll prepare some talking points for the next meeting in terms of putting more structure into the committee, and we may reach out to you, Caesar and Grant, get some of your ideas on committees you've sat on that and what's worked, and we'll bring those forward and hopefully come up with a formal structure. And in the meantime, I would definitely strongly encourage all of you to listen in on the board meetings and participate. You can provide your own opinion, or if you feel it's an opinion that was reasonably expressed by all the committee members, you can express it as a committee opinion. So, but to listen and hear what's going on in the conversations, I think is very, very important for this committee right now, especially around the city withdrawal and the relocation project. So are there any specific topics you would like Mandy and I to bring back for you to discuss further in November, other than the committee structure, and then any updates we might have? Unfortunately, with the negotiations with Republic, most of it is still closed door stuff. I'm just today I was only able to really give you an overview, but at some point it'll be a little more of an open discussion with the board once we've gotten past some of the real property components of this and we're into just negotiating an operating agreement. So we'll bring some of that back, but are there specific topics you guys would like us to continue to provide, or additional information on some of these topics that would help you?
This is Paula. I think one of the things that will be important is that several of us are from the old CAG, and there are a lot of new members now, and we have differing levels of not knowledge, but just experience with what some of these issues are and what the background is for some of them. So I think that would be very valuable to bring everybody up to speed together, so that because I think especially the transfer station, there's so much history, and that makes such a difference perhaps makes a difference in our outlook for moving forward. And I don't know how many people are up to date on the history of, what we did over the last 5 years. or even the last 10 years.
Well,
I would encourage us to maybe include Mandy or you or somebody in some of our subcommittee meetings, at least at the beginning, to help guide us in terms of what's feasible and what isn't feasible, because there are some things that are just not feasible that we've learned from experience. And so no sense wasting our time on that.
yeah. Well, I think the simple answer to that is I think that's important for people to understand the history. But where we are right now with Salinas and Republic, and sort of out of the driver's seat, and looking at an apartment as opposed to buying a new home, the history is almost irrelevant today unless we can't make headway with Republic, because this is the project the city says they'll support, and they're doing that under threat of withdrawal if we don't move it forward or can't move it forward. Doesn't mean the next city council won't be different and have a different view, but we're not going to know that for several months, simply because new council members are going to take a little while to develop a formal opinion on this issue if they haven't been involved. So I think for now, for us, it's really about focusing on how do we get the city to not withdraw and to give up this idea, and how do we move a project forward that we know right now, at least in concept, they will support.
Yeah, I must have missed that when you were giving your report, because I didn't realize that their withdrawal was to some extent dependent on Madison Lane.
Well, that's the statement. I don't know how true that is, because we haven't seen the background information they're using to say things like Tony Villegas said that, we think we have what we need to make a decision to withdraw. None of that information has been shared publicly.
Are we able to request it with the Freedom of Information Act?
Well, I think a few of you did. Because remember, the advisory committee asked for a draft of that a while back, and we provided.
Well, I knew that Rob had talked about it, but I didn't ever hear whether, in fact, we actually received that information.
Well, I can't technically speak for Rob here, but I know Rob's perspective is that we're making some progress, and when you start throwing Public Records Act requests out, it can change the mood of people on the other side. So I think part of it is simply, we understand we have a very legitimate legal reason to say that report should not be hidden from the public and from us. It's over a year over. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to put that in that would be very strong and compelling reasons that would force that. But Rob's perspective is let's try to see if we can make this work without stirring up a hornet's nest. And he's the man in charge and leading this right now. I think he's doing a good job, and we're trying to support his perspective and actually do something that's going to solve the problem. The problem we've got, there's three players at the table. One of them sort of new, and the other one is a multinational corporation, and they're not the easiest entities to deal with. So we're working through it.
All right.
But I think the more we hear, the more the board hears from all of you as committee members, I think the stronger the authority's position continues to be. And particularly since we have such a wide breadth of experience, and you're all stakeholders, whether you're members of the public or whether you're representing large organizations, chambers, and agricultural entities. Your voices matter as much or more than anybody's in this. Because I can get up and talk all day, as you all know. doesn't, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I think.
Okay, so I think with that, Patrick, I don't want to cut you off, but we're at 6 o'clock, and I think we usually try to keep it to at least 2 hours or less. So I think we heard that we need to come back with some topic lists, and that Patrick and I will also come back with maybe some potential structure for subcommittees, and that the AC members would like an email list sent out, so maybe you guys can chat amongst yourselves. Is that correct?
Sounds good.
Wait. I have a quick question. Are we a Brown Act committee or are we not? Because if we are, that changes the rules. I just want to make sure we don't do a foul.
Oh, we are a Brown Act.
Yes,
okay.
we are.
Yes.
Oh,
We are. So we can't necessarily. We can share the communication. We just can't have a serial meeting or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, a serial meeting. Gotcha.
They can't chat
Yeah.
themselves. Yeah.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, so no chatting over email. I take that back.
Well, do we have any I think just for the issue around the transfer station and withdrawal and relocation, do we have anybody that wants to volunteer to be on that subcommittee, just so we can start that kind of structure? I mean, we'll come back and talk about the full advisory committee structure at the next meeting, and look at getting a chair and a vice chair and that kind of thing. But might be good because it's timely to have at least a small group of you being willing to have a formal meeting and begin to talk about what you think is important in that specific issue.
Patrick, I think it's important that we get the structure of the subcommittees lined up and then ask people for volunteering so they know what the expectations are, and how we all meet. And I think also if everybody can submit their approval to share email addresses and contact to SVR, then we can start building that list instead of talking amongst each other, So if people want to participate in this, they can share or are willing to share their contact information, then I think it's important that it starts and is disseminated through SVR.
So Patrick, I would suggest that we wait until we set the structure and that Rob is on the meeting so we can actually make any decisions, just to be safe, even prior to start sharing contact information.
Yeah, I think the issue of this being a Brown Act committee, I think Caesar's absolutely correct. It does change the rules. So, well, as much as I would encourage you to talk amongst yourselves, under the original advisory group had no structure like that, and so the citizens group was not a Brown Act. This one, though, I think we structured a little differently. So,
yeah.
Okay, we'll come back with some ideas for committee structure, and we'll have that discussion in November, and hopefully come to some agreement on a subcommittee, which subcommittees we need for which specific issues, and get volunteers for that at that meeting. But in the meantime, in case something timely does happen, I would definitely encourage all of you to that can to dial in, and we'll have Erica send out the meeting calendars for our meetings, both our executive and board meetings, as well as the City of Salinas meetings, since those are the three places where everything's made. What's going to happen? It's going to happen there.
Yeah, on the issue of the City of Salinas, because I think my title on the advisory committee is resident of Salinas. I think I'm probably going to be part of it, but I think, Patrick, you have the power to call a meeting of this committee in case there's something that's timely, that it's like, hey, and then we could figure out the subcommittee structure in case we can't wait for the next scheduled meeting. If that makes sense.
Correct.
We just call a special meeting. But
We can, and we will if it gets rushed. We're hoping that saner minds will prevail. The city's not going to rush this and give it a little bit of time because, yeah, we need time to digest whatever they're going to put out there. And they shouldn't rush it forward and give it to us Friday night before a Tuesday council. They expect us to react and digest it. They didn't like it the last time they did that, and I showed up at a meeting with a response that the mayor was not happy about. But that's what happens when you keep people in the dark until the end. I'd rather have some measured approach to replying to whatever the city's intentions or ideas are, and to be able to vet it through the committee and have the committee part of that response.
When is the next City of Salinas meeting?
November, the first Tuesday in November.
Do we anticipate
The 3rd.
Oh, the 3rd.
So they have one on the 3rd and then one on the 17th.
Election Day?
Yeah, election
Yes.
day.
Aye.
Yeah.
So do we anticipate action as quickly as the 3rd of November on this?
That would be deeply disrespectful because we've been promised that we would be given a heads up and an opportunity to look at materials in advance, well in advance, not over a weekend. And so what we did here also at the city council meeting, there was a counterpoint to Council Member Villegas's recommendation, and that was that this go to the city's finance committee first. So I don't anticipate it's going to be on next week's agenda, especially on election night. This is not what they want to be talking about on election night. It's probably going to be on the agenda, I think.
Yeah.
So my guess is that there will be some level of discussion, and I've been promised that I would have an opportunity to present, not just 3 minutes of speech, but to present an authority side and provide an update on the relocation project at maybe the next finance committee meeting. It wasn't real clear. I think they were just throwing it out there that they wanted to give us an opportunity to speak and provide more information. So I'm expecting it may be at the next finance committee in November, and I don't have that date handy.
So it sounds like we're functioning under the mushroom theory to a certain extent.
Well, I think the leadership.
It's going to happen, but we don't know when.
I have a lot of faith in the interim leadership we have in there with Mayor Cromines and Jim Pia as the interim city manager. We seem to be working well, and Jim and I go way back and worked on this project back when before he was interim city manager, and actually he was involved in some of the discussions around relocation 10 years ago. So Jim's a great guy. He's really working hard to keep a positive collaboration going. And Christiana, the site, also recognizes the value of what we're doing and is really looking out for everybody, not just the city. She's looking out for the agency as well as our South County members. She doesn't want to hurt them. So I think right now we've just got the right mix of people to try to get to at least the first level of a project, and that's to have a business deal.
Yeah. Okay.
We're all focusing on us getting that done before the end of the year, so that hopefully whatever the makeup and opinion is of the new council, they'll be supportive of continuing the process because we've made progress.
Do you feel that Mayor Cromini will be able to hold off any vote by the current city council?
Can't tell you. The city has its own structure of how they bring an item back for voting. How they get an item agendized. She has a lot of control, but she doesn't have ultimate control. So whether she can hold back 2 or 3 council members that want to request that an item date, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a challenge for her.
No, the bylaws in the city give the power to the mayor to set up the agenda. Just so you guys know.
Yeah, but they also have their buddy system where someone can call for a future action to be taken. Yes, she can set the agenda and she can say, great, I hear you. I've got 2 people that want to do an item, but we're going to make it for January.
No, what I'm saying is you're right about the buddy system or not even the buddy, but it's two members could say, I want it on the agenda. At a future agenda, it's up to the mayor what that future agenda would be. Does that make sense?
You're right. So it just depends on how hard she wants to push for that. But I think going to the compromise was to take it to the finance committee first and let them vet it. I'm not quite sure what the finance committee is going to vet. Because we don't know what work product their consultant is preparing. So.
Sorry guys to interrupt, but I got to get going. I got a fire call.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Well, we're wrapping up here. All right. Well, we'll bring back a committee structure. We'll definitely bring that back. And Grant and Caesar, we may pick your brains between now and the November meeting and get some guidance from your experience, and we'll take it from there. And we'll Mandy or I will or Erica will send out the meeting schedule for you all, so you can know when the meetings are.
This is Marty. I would make the point that in November, Thanksgiving falls, so that might interrupt with our meeting schedule.
We'll take a look at that and we'll poll everybody. Maybe we push it back a week, do it the first week in December. With our schedule, our board doesn't normally meet in December, but there is definitely a chance they're going to meet in December because of the potential that this thing may come forward to council before the end of the year, or it may not. We just don't know for certain. So we have to be fluid. But yeah, we'll keep that in mind, Marty. Because you may be right. If people aren't comfortable having a meeting the Tuesday before Thanksgiving because they may be taking extended holidays, we can pull for an alternate Tuesday, either the week before or the week after.
Yeah.
We're 2 years into a 1-year withdrawal notice. I think they can hold off a couple of weeks for the holidays.
I wish I had an answer, but as Paula said, right now I'm just a mushroom.
Well, given that the implications don't affect just Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority and Salinas, it affects every member agency. So really the polite thing to do by Salinas would be to notify each agency through Salinas Valley Recycles and let them all have time to comment on Salinas' decision before they make it. There's a bit of redundancy in that, but it's still giving each council member in each city a chance to chime in on it since it affects their constituents.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mayor Cromines said that very adeptly, that she's more concerned about the impacts of everybody else than just walking away. And I haven't even begun to speak on financial and economic implications of this to the city. I mean, this is a two-way street. I mean, they may be able to do this and figure it out, but there are some long-range financial implications that need to be discussed. We need to be transparent all the way across the board. It seems like everybody's looked through our underwear drawer and knows everything we own and what color it is, but it hasn't been done vice versa yet. So and it's mostly because I'm not a big fan of nuclear war. I'd rather hug it out and find a solution a lot easier that way than cast in stone. So
Yeah.
we'll get there.
Have
But I
a great-
appreciate everybody's feedback tonight.
Before we go, can I ask Mandy a quick question? Mandy.
What do you do with, how do you recycle old underwear, Paula? I think
No.
we've had this one. Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
That one I know. I'm curious about your background.
Oh, I'm floating in space.
Is that what that is? I kind of thought maybe that's what that was.
I think
That's
it's
what
a
it's like
solar.
to attend a Zoom meeting, right? Lately, it's just like you're just kind of floating out in space.
Well, it looks good. It looks interesting.
Thank you.
It looks like you're very comfortable.
I'm trying to be.
Okay, goodbye, everybody.
All right.
All
Thank
right,
you,
everybody.
everyone. Appreciate
Be
it.
safe. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.